In today's episode, can you save the data on my phone? Your mother's name and your birth date can't be fixed because you don't know what mistakes we made. Nobody in this telco is allowed to tell you if our services were used to violate electoral law. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Can you save the data on my phone? Tales I posted so far were about my work at the telco I'm currently employed at, or another IT job I had when I was starting out. Yet I've also worked jobs of my own for private parties through the years, as they were very profitable side gigs. To be honest, I still do some once in a blue moon. My rates nowadays for private work are purposely high. I want to avoid volume, but I have tales worth sharing when it comes to self-employment. One Saturday morning a couple years back, my phone rang with an unusual tune. I have several different numbers, each with its own ringtone, but hadn't heard this one in a while as I was already phasing out my former side gig by then. It was an old customer. Old customer, Bitewave? I don't know if you remember me. You somehow salvaged my files from a virus a few years ago, and then earlier from that wipe thing? Look, I tried 2 local techs. They couldn't do anything. My cell phone was dropped in hot soap water. I could lose everything I have locally on my phone. That will absolutely not do. I know you are done with this line of work, but I'd really like you to try. Money is no object, if you can get it done. Well, that was the kind of offer that's hard to turn down. Bitewave, I still do a little work on the side, but yeah, I'm mostly out of my old business. My rates have gone up quite a bit, but for past customers who can meet them, I'm still there on an extraordinary basis. As I'm not a scam artist, I will say right away. Since you need data recovery, you're not talking to the right guy. I can give you 2 or 3 numbers for professional data recovery firms who have tools better than my own to do this. Professional data recovery is pricey, but I don't think this is an issue here. The lady kept an apartment in NY's Upper East Side as just another residence because she had family there. Obviously, if she cared about data on her cell, paying 10-20K-ish to a professional recovery firm was pennies for her. I'm just a guy teaching frontline for a telco. This wasn't my field of expertise. Old customer, but I don't trust them. You helped me out twice, both times when others had failed before. If you want to contract the work to other specialists, that's great. I just want you in charge of the process from A to Z, deciding who does what. It's not about money. And please don't do it yourself if someone could potentially do it better. I just need someone knowledgeable to call the right people. I'd rather you didn't if there's any risk. I'll never know who to trust, but you do. Handle it. You'll be paid as many hours as you need at any rate plus their full bill, even if it's ultimately unrecoverable. Well, that kind of offer makes a Saturday morning. I silently giggled and yet cheered as I promptly agreed. She was on the other side of Canada, and yet barely 3 hours later 2 couriers were on the ground floor of my condo tower with a box, most of which was filled with rice, and the cell phone was deep in. She since then had forwarded me emails from her first 2 technicians, both of whom were all about using either rice or distilled water to fix the water damage to her phone. If I have to hear about rice or distilled water one more time. No, that's not how you reliably fix water damage. The best homemade solution is high-strength isopropyl alcohol. I've salvaged many water-damaged devices by taking them utterly apart and using a strong concentration of isopropyl alcohol on every part, and then putting it back together. Nothing else absorbs water just as well without damaging hardware. In her case, as per her directions, I'm just an intermediary to professionals in the field. If I had to, I'd use 99% isopropyl, but she's specifically paying me just to overview the process, not to do it myself. I'm pretty sure the guys I'll be calling know far more than I do when it comes to data recovery. Just because I've recovered most other devices I've worked with before with that technique, clearly I'm still nowhere where the technique specialists use. Data recovery was never my field, even though I can do an acceptable field attempt. Having easy access to 99% isopropyl is already a good start sometimes. Many others prefer to do with the 91% variety commonly sold in the US. It's usually almost as good, but in my mind, professional firms ought to have capabilities that far outweigh this. I call the top recovery firms I know of from personal experience and explain the problem. Pricey, but the customer will not care. I could name the company I chose, but I'm not offering free publicity. They get to work, and soon later, they call me back. Data recovery, yeah, I'm calling with some great news. We've been able to recover everything on your list. Lightwave, superb. I didn't expect any less from you guys. Can I ask about your recovery technique? You'll be paid the full amount anyhow, but I'm very curious professionally. Data recovery, each component was carefully taken apart by our expert technicians and dipped into high concentration 91% isopropyl alcohol, ensuring that. Oh hell, you've got to be kidding me. Despite my premium rates and my ability to easily score better concentrations than these guys had, I ended up getting a smaller cut of the final bill for a technique I could have qualitatively bested if I had done it on my own, with what I already had access to. Contracting it onwards to the experts thinking they'd do something I couldn't was utterly useless. Yet it's still hard to complain, as my final bill for this job was by far the best per hour I ever had. Still, it taught me a lesson. It's great to contract down, but never do it unless you are certain it's in your financial interest. Facepalms. All of Bytewave's tales on TFTS. Your mother's name and your birthdate can't be fixed because you don't know what mistakes we made. Recently, I was going through recent customer complaints at my telco. It's one of the tasks I often do as senior staff. I filter them to separate the legitimate ones and the frivolous ones to decide which we address. And also the administrative versus the technical, to know who will deal with what. Then I dispatch the workload either to union tech specialized in recalls or low-level management. Now I come to one where a customer was refused help 3 times, and then emailed in a complaint, obviously. 3 calls, and given she had very bad luck, she got contractors all 3 times, even though they make up just 10 to 15% of the workforce. Frontline contractors often have to adhere to scripts rather than common sense, never mind logic. Of course, calls start by identifying customers through their name, their address, their mother's name, and their birthdate, pretty standard stuff. All 3 calls apparently ended with contractors refusing service as the customer could not be ID'd despite the customer saying the file just had wrong info. On file, the customer's mother is written in as Anna Vanleywalk, which already rings alarm bells. What kind of name is Vanleywalk? Google says nobody's. And there's the birthday, July 2, 1990. I test the service and immediately see the modem has been offline since minutes before the first of the 3 calls. Sigh. Obvious RF issue to boot. I have someone call back the customer to correct the file, and I later listen to the call. Listening to calls for quality control now and then is fun, and I'll admit, a good way to take a little break while scoring bonus points for my follow-through. Henry, yes, we're sorry, our file is likely just wrong. Instead, if you could give me the amount on your latest bill, we'll fill this up again. Customer, I can't believe I got refused service 3 times, this is still not working. I asked them to correct it, but they said they couldn't because I had the wrong birthdate and mother's name. Henry, that's correct, we're very sorry about the inconvenience. If you could spell out your full name and address, please. Those are matches. Henry, your mother's full name? Customer, Anna Van Leeuwenhoek. I just burst laughing. Wow. Okay, she has a Dutch accent, but the person filling her file screwed up bad. Henry, date of birth? Customer, February 7, 1990. OMG, they mixed up the day and the month too. ISO 8601 is hard. And none of our contractors was smart enough to realize they were both very obvious mix-ups. Henry then scheduled a service call to restore service, it was just an obvious case of bad signal to noise. And I updated Frontline script with an alternate identification method in cases where information the customer gives us is wrong but they say it's our mistake. Keep scripts short and simple to shorten calls they tell us. Yes, I will. The minute we no longer need to provide a script able to replace common sense. All of Bytewave's Tales on TFTS. Nobody in this telco is allowed to tell you if our services were used to violate electoral law. Union heavy tale. One day at my telco, I get an unusual assignment. I'm to review extensive yet obscure logs to determine whether a voting machine may have been compromised. A complaint had been filed by a candidate for MP. They had complained to the office of the man in charge of enforcing rules regarding elections in their province. My boss gave it to me, and not thinking much about it, I got to work. The machine itself is not ours, we don't provide this kind of hardware, but it has a wireless component we provided, and someone feared it could be compromised. I get the logs and talk to a few people, everyone agrees it's a baseless claim. It has 2048-bit encryption and other security features, plus the independent party complaining had a slim chance at winning this writing in the best of cases. But management and legal are nervous the claim was made at all, so I prepare a detailed report explaining everything is peachy, and we have hard evidence nothing could have been compromised on our end. The basis for the claim itself appears bogus, so I'm secure in my report. I'm close to sending it in when two union reps walk up to senior staff's half floor and request an emergency union-related meeting with me, which management is bound to grant no matter who asks. Minutes later in a closed room. Bytewave, hey guys, what's up? It's a bit unusual for them to go for formal protocol like this. Usually, if they have to ask members anything, it's at break over informal coffee. Records of meetings are for management, we don't want them on our end. But I trust them either way, obviously if they ask this way, there's something up. Union rep, a member asked us to enforce 26.1C an hour ago regarding something you're working on. I've been a union rep briefly, but I don't know the work contract that well. He puts a copy on the table, and I look it up. Yeah, I know 26.1C. Should the union determine that any employee's physical security may be at risk if they agree to perform a task requested by management, said request will be ignored and said task may not be performed by any member of the union until cleared unanimously by the 6 representatives of the corporation and the 6 representatives of the union on the Health and Safety Committee. Bytewave. Wow. Who gave the go-ahead on this? I don't know who filed the complaint, but this whole claim seems baseless. Our wireless is not at fault. Who is at risk? Union rep, we also thought it was technically baseless, but it's not about the claim you had to ask, it's whom. It's a fringe local far-right party known for a history of violence, and which should really be banned from running. Another union member was offered the task you are performing, found out who filed the complaint and came to us saying it was too dangerous. The executive committee met 30 minutes ago and voted to agree to invoke 26.1C. No matter your findings, if any, turning them in now would violate the work contract. Safety first. Legal and HR will be handed a paper being drawn up by union lawyers, and you shouldn't hear about it again. Realistically, the only departments who could be asked to investigate this are technical support senior staff or the internal security department, but either way it hardly matters. It seems a bit over the top, but these aren't rules I break too lightly. Bytewave, well then, I'm done with this assignment, do your thing. The union reps immediately turned in a 26.1C refusal for unsafe or unsanitary conditions, and the Health and Safety Committee was summarily summoned. They failed to agree unanimously that it should be overridden. Almost on party lines, admittedly. They previously played a part in this tale. Few hours later. Boss, well we're in some sh*t. Company can't have any union member investigate this, and management is prohibited from looking into it because it falls under the purview of union job descriptions, and federal authorities want a reply from the company. I'm not sure what to tell my boss. Bitewave, yeah, real bind, but you know you shouldn't be talking to me about this right now. Love my boss, trust him too, he was a union member for well over a decade too, but for that reason I know he knows just asking me about this now is wrong. Everything should go through health and safety. Boss, yeah, I know. I'm just panicking a bit, they're being a bit pushy, and I don't have the union to fall back on anymore. I told HR no too often lately. I'm wondering if I can call in my chit here? He seriously saved my ass once before, it was verbally agreed I owed him one. For me, that promise trumped procedure. Bitewave. By definition, chits can be called in any time. Nobody who works here can give you an answer, but our contractors can. They are neither union nor management, and as agreed per the work contract, they are allowed to do union jobs to up negotiated ratios. Most are too worthless to do this, but I have a short list of competent ones. I'll have a number on your desk in 10 minutes, gotta make sure they're up for it first. There really is a small risk. Boss sigh of relief, thank you. I was honest with who I was calling about the reason why we couldn't do it ourselves. Person who said yes really didn't care, being very far physically and having faced worse at home. Soon after, boss got an email from my best contractor that's very shallow praise, but she's actually quite good explaining why it can't possibly be the corporation's fault with clear evidence provided, much like what I was planning to send in earlier. The union is tremendously helpful, but sometimes you gotta skirt the rules a little to keep the ship sailing. And I take IOUs seriously. All of Bitewave's tales on TFTS.